Now that we have our renders all set up for us, let's start off with the full day PSD file. Now the first thing we want to do is actually fix up the corrugated glass and relieve it of any noise that it has had from the render. Now we could have also done a render region in Modo and up the anti-aliasing, but for this we actually don't need to do that. So let's go to Final LDR. Let's duplicate it out of safe measure and go to selection, load selection. I want you to navigate to the cabinet alpha we created earlier. Press OK. And then press on the mask icon here in Photoshop under layers. Okay. So basically that leaves us with the cabinet glass on its own. Okay. Go and make sure you select the actual layer and not the mask. Go to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur. Now obviously that's, let's unlink that. Just click on that link. That way when you blur the layer, it will not blur the actual mask. So Blur, Motion Blur. That's a bit too much. We're only going to use a few pixels. And you want the direction to go with the corrugated direction. So don't go horizontal or perpendicular to that. Try to match exactly the same angle. So we're going to go to about 4 pixels. There we go. And that should do it for that. So you can click on both layers and merge layers, or Command E. There we go. Let's do the same thing in Night Shot just to get it over with. You can see the Night Shot has a bit more noise, and you'll see the effect to be more evident here. So Final LDR, we did second copy, load selection, cabinet alpha, OK, create a mask, unlink a mask, click on the actual layer, filter, motion blur, and OK. And you can see that that's made it a lot nicer and smoother. Go back to the day shot. Okay, now that we've done that, let's get rid of that copy name. Here we go. Right click on the LDR and convert to Smart Object. That will give me the option to actually apply filters, such as the next one. So filters, artistic, paint daubs, or you might want to do sharpen, whichever one you want. You go to brush size 1, sharpness 1, simple type, brush type simple. This is paint daubs. Press OK. Basically, whether it's a smart layer, that's not destructive, so I can turn it on and off at any time. I can also layer it if I wanted to. Okay? Let's pull this all the way at the bottom. Take the shadow up, make it invisible. Make all of the other layers invisible as well. So first off, let's duplicate the final LDR. So right click, duplicate. Sure. And we don't want the paint daubs here, so you can just click and drag them out to the garbage. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. 4 pixels. Set the blending mode to soft light and take the opacity down to 25%. This will just give me a nice soft boost in color. Okay. Now before we move on, let's actually do something corrective. So as you can see here, all my other shading outputs don't have the glass area taken out. So what I need to do is select load selection and go to alpha 1. There we go. We're going to start off with our initial final LDR. Just click on the mask. This will create a mask that will take out all the transparent items here. So to do that for everything else, press Alt and click on the mask and drag it up throughout all of my layers. You can stop at the ambient occlusion since we're not going to be using the shadow density. Okay. Now that we have that done, let's also add another new layer. Make it a white, just fill it with white right there. You can also go for a nice blue gradient if you would like. I'm just going to keep it at white at this point. Go to the subsurface shading. So right now we have the subsurfacing for all these items. Let's make this into a screen blending mode and set the opacity down to 50%. You'll notice that my bamboo leaves as well as my drapes have kind of popped out a little bit, which is what we want. Go to diffuse shading. Now diffuse shading basically represents the direct light that we have. So this will be the sunlight, direct light. Let's set this to screen. So now that's also added a punch. You can also set a level control for this. Just kind of drag this to the right. Don't look at anything else except for the actual direct light, which is the sunlight at this point. You'll see why in a second. Here we go. Now press Alt and now put your pointer in between the level and the diffuse and click. This will basically make it only control that one layer. So if I double click again, here you go. We're going to add another adjustment layer. This one's going to desaturate that color just a little bit because it's too yellow. Press OK. So both of these are only affecting the diffuse shading, which is what I want. Go to reflection shading and you'll see all the reflections on their own. Also screen, and let's take this down to 25%. Now let's go to the shading normal that we had before. So I have a feeling I want some extra oomph on the top and bottom. So make sure this is the one we're talking about. Now what I want is to adjust this to contain darker amounts. I only want it to affect the top view. So set this to screen. This is going to be very, very low at 5. You can see the difference on the countertop, on the floor, on the chair, where it makes a really good difference from bringing those from black pixels up just a little bit. You don't want to exaggerate that. Okay. You can do the same thing with the right, left, or the front and back, depending on what you need for your scene in the same manner. And last but not least, our ambient occlusion. So let's see what this is going to do for us. We're going to set this to overlay. Okay. And this is going to give us some nice control over the bamboo area, but it's a bit too noisy, so let's blur that just a little bit. Let's go to 5 and set this down to 25%. There you go. And that kind of just gives you some control over where you'd need more darkening, like within the corners and in the bamboo area here, as well as under the mattress or the daybed. Now that that's all done, duplicate your layer 1 and put it all the way at the top. So there's nothing interesting right now. Now, Alt-click on the mask and drag that to that layer. Now, what I want you to do is, while that mask is selected, press Apple I, Control I, or Image, Adjustment, Invert. So that inverts our mask, basically making this white on top of everything. And I want you to double click on that, or go to blending options, right click blending options. Go to color overlay. Not very interesting at this point. We're going to plug in 255, 255, and 243. It's a yellowish white. Press OK. Outer glow on, also. Same color. 243. Set this to normal. Okay. We're going to size this to about 13 pixels. There you go. Let's go to that mask area and get a black brush. We're going to brush this off, basically creating a true black here. It was putting the alpha of those cabinet glass in that alpha as well, so we wanted to get rid of that. And let's go to Diffuse Shading Direct, which is this one. Also go to the mask, and let's mask out this color right here. I don't want this to be multiplied like the sun. We're going to duplicate this once more, and we're going to set this to a blur as well, just to give it a little bit of bounce or glow right there. Let's go to the subsurface scattering and click on the mask, and we're going to actually take out the bamboo as well as the leaves, leaving us with only the drapes, and you're going to take out the living room table lamp. So all that is left is that, basically. So we want to also blur that. And that goes over our drapes, nicely. All right. Once we're done with everything else, click on a level adjustment layer all the way to the top. Now what you could do is just to kind of punch out, just bring in your blacks a little bit and your whites in. Press OK. Now if this has been a very tight shot, you could also do some lens blur using the depth output that we have. I'll show you an example just to share that information. So let's say Final LDR. Go to Filter. We have to use a non-smart layer for that. Rasterized layer. Come on, Adobe. Rasterize smart object. There we go. Go to Filter, Blur, Lens Blur. Now, this is Lens Blur in Photoshop. Our depth map is going to be our depth alpha mask, which we created, and that's why we stuck it in the back. So you can click anywhere you want for the focus to be on. So let's say I want to focus on this area. Click on that. Increase the radius. You'll start seeing everything else come into focus. Put that radius up. There we go. Takes time on a big shot like this. So this is exaggerated, but you see the point. Basically, when you're clicking here on anywhere in your image, you're not clicking on the image itself, but on the depth mask which you've created. So if I click here, I'm clicking on a certain shade of gray, which is being input into the blur focal distance, and then it's using that to keep it in focus, and then the radius is basically the maximum blurring that's happening at the other end of the spectrum. So as you can see, this looks like a small model shot with a macro lens or something. If I click on the chair, it'll take that number, which is 80, and again, adjust the values to suit my needs. Now, in an architectural shot like this, you might have a little bit of lens blur, nothing too huge. In our case, we're not going to use it. But this is just to emphasize that you can use this kind of post work in your shots. Yeah, see, now it looks like it's a little Barbie house or something. If that's what you're looking for, though, so be it. Press cancel. Delete that layer. Let's get back all our layers here. There we go. Okay. Now that that's done, let's save that as full day done. We're going to do the same thing with the night shot. Moving on to our night shot, let's fix up our alpha first of all. I'm going to duplicate this alpha channel. We're going to call this alpha 1 fixed. Now, one thing you're going to notice is that there's a few gray areas we're going to fix up over in this. And this is because I don't want them to show up. Now, if they do currently the way it is, those bars in the back are going to be the same color as the drapes. They're not going to actually show me the black color over here. So the transparency will actually be killed off. In the day shot, that didn't matter because this was all going to be even more white or brighter than those pixels. So here I need to be darker. We have to fix the alpha. So let's do that. Click on brush. Make sure you have a white color. Make sure the alpha fixed is selected. Now what we want to do is get rid of basically all of this. If you're using a tablet, that's great. If you're not, either use the mouse really carefully by zooming in. You can use the lasso tool as well. You can use any number of tools to get the job done. Okay. So this shouldn't take too much time to fix up. And there we go. And there are also these ones from the glass. This is the glass refracting the alpha basically, and I don't want that to happen. As you saw in the day shot, we actually did that later on in the stages. Okay. Here we go. Now let's go back to the final LDR. Let us load that selection in. Fixed. Looks good. Press on the mask. And let's take these and clear the links. Now for the background, you can use any number of things, gradients, just a true black, or you can download any image or shoot your images yourself. So for instance, I'm going to use this shot right here. Just going to drag it here. Just going to put this to be my backdrop by giving it the same mask and inverting that mask. Okay. Now you'll notice some issues here and there. That's going to be no problem. You can either expand the mask by going to Filter, Maximum, or Filter, Other, Maximum. Just increase one more step. That'll take the mask and give it one more pixel to add to your selection. Okay. Once we're happy with that, now of course since the mask is set, you can move this up and down, right and left according to your shot. If you need to rotate it, it really depends on where the horizon is in your shot. So now that that is done, let's convert this to Smart Object, drag that shadow out and hide it. Alright, so drag the final down. Let's make a copy of that one. So the top one's going to be blurred by 4. Set to soft light, set this to 40. Let's hide these so you can see the effect. And the bottom one to filter, artistic, paint knobs, make sure it's 1 and 1. Okay. Now, subsurface, let's set this to, set this to screen, and at 50%. That looks good. Diffuse. Now the diffuse shading is not going to be the same thing as we did in the day shot because we don't have strong sunlight. These are all very subtle lighting effects. But what you could do is set it to screen. Now I'm not really happy about these areas, so I'm going to actually take them off by adjusting the mask. Select a nice soft brush, black color on the mask. There we go. Might need something softer than that even. Let's go for something bigger. There we go. Okay. Once that's done, get the reflections again. Screen 50. Okay. So now that that's all done, let's get our ambient occlusion. Set it down here. Set to overlay. That's a bit too harsh for us, so we're going to actually blur that one too, 2 pixels. And set this down to 25%. Okay, so that looks all good, but I need to emphasize the feeling that this is nighttime. I want to emphasize the blues, the blue colors. So let's add an adjustment layer. And go to Photo Filter. Let's select a nice the cold blue. Let's get this up to 80%. Now I don't want it to affect everything, but I want to affect the top most areas, so we're going to add a mask to this. Oh, there's a mask already. Click on your gradients, select a simple gradient, black to white. Okay, just drag it down all the way, just to get a sense of a bit more blues in the top part where the moonlight is hitting. Let me show you what it looks like before. Okay. Again, this is about making the shot look nice and not about the realism of the shot. Okay. If you think that's too much, you can either play with opacity or the density. So let's take this down to 75%. Just want to break. I don't want that orange tone to be too evident in my shot. Once I am happy with this, you can just go ahead and save this as night. Done. And we are finished.